Welcome to Inhale, Exhale, Elevate. I am Autumn Shelton. Today's guest is Jocelyn Sheltraw. She is the co-founder and CEO of Budist, the first professional review platform for cannabis products and brands. With 7 years of experience in the cannabis industry, Jocelyn has established herself as a recognized entrepreneur, advocate, public speaker, and thought leader. Prior to founding Budist, Jocelyn spent 5 years at Headset, the leading data and analytics solution, where she played a pivotal role in the development and success of the company. She is one of the 300 certified Ganjiers worldwide, lectures at StartSe University, and has been actively involved in cannabis policy, having served on the board of directors for the California Cannabis Industry Association from 2021 to 2023. Her contributions have earned her numerous industry awards and accolades, including Leaf Magazine's 2024 Impact List, MG Magazine's 40 Under 40, and nominated as one of the 100 most influential people by Global Cannabis Times. Prior to cannabis, Jocelyn spent over a decade in the emerging mobile app industry, working on the agency side with global brands including Spotify, SoundCloud, Pandora, Flipboard, and Uber. Welcome to Inhale, Exhale, Elevate podcast. I am Autumn Shelton. This is a podcast hosted from our Santa Barbara Coast family cannabis farm to help keep your feet on the ground and your head in the sky. Autumn Brands and our female founders have a message that goes beyond just flowers. Learn about how our two families created a booming cannabis company that is leading the industry towards cleaner and more sustainable cannabis production. We aspire to move beyond strictly cannabis to help plant medicine lose the stoner stigma as we talk about all things holistic health. Welcome, Jocelyn.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you, and yay, this is finally happening.
Me too. You were definitely one of my favorite people, so I can't wait to learn more and dive in deep. Yeah. So why don't we start with your backstory about what brought you into the cannabis industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've long been a lover of the plant, an enthusiast. I've been consuming pretty much daily for the past 10 years. And over the past, I've been in the industry for 7 years now. But initially what attracted me to it is it's truly a love of building and being a part of something new. For me, you mentioned I spent 10 years working in mobile, and that was really the start of my career after graduating college. It's just so crazy to think about how much our lives have changed since, the advent of the iPhone and all of these apps just being built. And so I was just a part of the birth of that whole industry. But for me, it started from just a true love of cannabis. And at the time when I first started getting into it, and again, I first consumed when I was 15, like many people do as a young person, just kind of testing our boundaries. It didn't take with me at that young age, and which I'm very glad about. And it wasn't until I moved up to San Francisco 12 years ago where I really started to explore it more. And it was really in search of just getting to know myself on a deeper level. But also as a connector within that was just with the experiences that I've had in life, I've just always been someone who's been attracted to new things, things that don't quite fit into some box of normalcy. And for whatever reason, it was just, I started looking at it when I was in the tech industry and was just like, you know what, this is going to it's going to have the next global impact, just like we saw the iPhone did, just as we saw the advent of a lot of these apps that we use and technologies that we use that are just changing the way that we go about our lives. And I just inherently knew that cannabis was going to be that next global shift, but something that would be for even more good. Not that what I was doing before and just with all of these apps and everything, it was such an incredible learning for me. And there was certainly an emotional connection of how much these different products or whatever positively impact my life. But just seeing and having so many, I grew up in Southern California. So cannabis culture was something that I grew up very much was a part of. But I just it's having something that's so emotionally connected to us on so many different levels, seeing that and then connecting the dots of just how cannabis, for whatever reason, whether it's medical, recreational, or just purely from a connoisseurship standpoint, I just knew that this would be something that would just impact the lives of so many people in a positive way, more than I was seeing or I was feeling in what I was doing in tech. And I just knew I had to be a part of it. And so I was working at a company called Rubicon Project, a global ad exchange. And I was working with hundreds of different app developers and just really helping them with their advertising campaigns. And a colleague of mine was like, hey, my neighbor is one of the co-founders of Leafly. And he knew I was a longtime cannabis, enthusiast. And he's like, you have to meet him. He's building this really cool company that could just be really, it's like up your alley. And so sure enough, we met up in San Francisco. Scott, the co-founder of Leafly, CEO of Headset, told me what he was building, and I was just blown away. And I was just like, wow, this is just not only the convergence of all of the things that I care about, but it's like this is going to have a major impact in just helping all of these new and emerging brands really understand how consumers are engaging with their products and just how the industry and the market's evolving as a whole. And sure enough, as things do in life, they just manifest if that's, if you're very clear on what you want. And then next thing I know, I was leaving this just really long, wonderful career that I had in tech and left all of that behind and kind of started a new life and like got integrated in new communities and have just been rocking and rolling in the cannabis industry ever since and just having the time of my life. But it was very much by design. Mm-hmm.
Well, Headset, even today, it's such an important part of how we get our data and how they've grown since it started. It's data is tricky because you can't obtain it all the information. So you also have to have certain algorithm to really kind of weigh out really what's truly happening. So can you tell us a little bit about how that approach, how you took that approach while you were at Headset to really make sure that this was real data that we could rely on as an industry?
Well, okay. So taking a step back and thinking about like when I came into the industry and it was early 2018. And at that point, well, for those unfamiliar, what Headset does is they aggregate point of sale data at the legal dispensaries in legal markets all around the country. And they're aggregating that data. And then once there's a large enough sample size of data, you can start breaking that data apart and you can really look at insights of, well, who's purchasing? What percentage of sales go to flower versus edibles versus beverages? You can take all of that transaction data, every sale that's coming through, and you can start to make sense of it. So at that time in the industry in 2018, this was a very new concept. Like at that time, and there have been companies out, BDSA, like many companies out there had been trying to really do this and get a large enough sample size of data to really go normalize it, make sense of it, and make sure that it's accurate information. Well, at that time, and the reason that I joined Headset was to help go get more retail connections so that the pool of data could be stronger so that the data was more accurate. And then we, of course, would then go sell that data to the brands. So for me, a big learning that I had through that process is like how to launch a marketplace. And this is something that I saw a lot working with, apps like Uber or a lot of retail apps or even mobile games apps. You have to build like both the supply and the demand at the same time, right? So we would have to go out and get retailers sharing their data with us, which in 2018, at that point, like people weren't using technology to track their sales. This was not a commonplace, normal thing. So here I was
a little speakeasy like as well. Everyone was still
very
pretty
much so. A lot of the industry at that point was simply like people were tracking their sales and understanding what products were performing. A lot of it was just done by pen and paper. And that worked for many years before the industry became what it is now. And this is all just grown and just is maturing so quickly. But with what I was tasked with was a really important lesson for me. It's something that's been really, important and a lot of learnings as we're building Budist, which also is a, two-sided marketplace. My biggest learning and takeaway from this and how to like get people trusting and sharing their data with us is that I had to be an active part of the community. And you really had to help people understand like how this thing would be useful to them and why they should trust the company and the business and the value exchange that would happen there. And so you're basically getting people bought into a big idea and helping people understand how this is going to help in their day-to-day when things are already so busy in their day-to-day. So it was a really big learning for me. I would walk into retailers on my own and say, hey, we have this incredible solution. It's going to take all your point of sale data. It's going to tell you what products you should purchase based on what's selling through, how much inventory you should purchase of that particular SKU. And I would just watch people's eyes just glaze over or just be like, lady, we're never like, why would we give you access to our data? So it was a really hard like proposition at that time. And I just learned very quickly, like, okay, I better build trust and help people understand that we're not here to just be some company that's just wanting to take their information and go do something nefarious with it. Like the spirit and the heart of not only the founders of Headset, obviously having started Leafly, they clearly care about cannabis. But then you get people like myself and then the growing team there who everybody was a passionate enthusiast and had their own story as to why they wanted to be a part of the industry. And it was just really magic to see what could happen from that and how people would get really creative to figure out a solution to a problem that was just so new and didn't really have any answers. So I'm lucky that I could lean on my past experience being part of another new and emerging industry that I was in that since the birth. And I was also, when I was in tech, selling a lot of new technologies. I was trying to evangelize and explain something very new to people. And I learned at that point as well, so much of what we're doing in life, whatever it is that we're selling, it requires that you have trust and authenticity. And if you don't have that, it's just really hard to get people interested in what you're doing and again, really have that trust to kind of proceed with you. So that's been so impactful for me, just kind of with everything now that I'm building, and just I'm fortunate to learn that very early on in my career in cannabis. And you got to adapt quickly. This industry is not for the faint of heart. And if you are not quickly learning, quickly evolving, and applying those learnings, it's just really hard to make it in this space with certainly without going a little bit crazy.
Well, I know those boots on the ground worked because, I mean, we're with Autumn Brands is with Kiva Sales and Service Distributor, and I know that they've really been able to work closely with Headset, and so many dispensaries have really embraced this, and this is going to be the future of them being able to utilize the data where the distributors can then just see the inventory sell through and be able to restock based on that information. And then all the brands get the information as well to understand what is selling, what is not selling, and to make wise industry market decisions. So
Yes.
Nice work.
Thank you. Well, and it's just something that every other industry is operating in this way. So that would also be part of what I was explaining, is like, well, look, if we want this to be an industry that people are taking seriously, then we have to also learn from how this is working in other industries. And fortunately, we just have a lot of great examples. You know, we can look at wine, we can look at coffee, we can look at beer, we can look at chocolate, and there's travel. There's just so many learnings to gain from how an industry evolves.
So let's move on to your next chapter. I know it was hard for you to leave Headset, but you had a vision. And I'd love for you to share with our listeners that vision and how it's developed over the last couple of years and where it is today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I live up in the Bay Area. I split my time between Oakland and Newport Beach, which I grew up here in Orange County. And I have always been around a lot of people, and in my life, just so passionate about wine. And I spend a lot of time, my partner, Claudio, who you know, he's also a big wine connoisseur. He's traveled every major wine region of the world. I have as well, not every major, but I've been to a significant portion of the wine regions. It's been a major passion of mine. And so I'm very involved in that community as well. And it was kind of like a light bulb moment as we're hanging out with a lot of our friends in Napa, going to all these beautiful wineries and just learning their processes and just really going down that rabbit hole of connoisseurship. It's just, there's very much like, it was kind of like not a light bulb moment, but it's just like, why in the cannabis industry don't we have this same kind of the same type of voices, people that are evangelizing and out sharing, you know, education and knowledge. It was just the experience that you have at a winery in getting to taste through products. You get to learn from a sommelier, learn from a winemaker, that whole process of just the consumer getting to be really involved and getting to experience wine in its just truest form. It just very much has throughout my journey and just loving wine. It's like, well, why don't we have that in cannabis? And it just became, again, a manifestation of a lot of these pieces coming together where Claudio and I, my partner, you know, life partner and business partner in building this out, we're just like, this should exist in cannabis where we have a similar path that we've seen in wine. If you look at the history of wine, it evolved in a very, I don't want to say similar manner, but it really took a couple catalyst moments, having wine critics that were educating consumers, being able to talk about the differences and nuances of products, just as we've had those experiences with wine, we're like, well, the cannabis industry just isn't there yet where a consumer would understand the difference between an indica or a sativa, and getting into terpenes and cannabinoids. We're just not there. And so when we've studied this and being a part of these other, things that we love, connoisseur items that we love, they've all kind of followed a similar path in how consumers became aware of those products, how there became a culture of connoisseurship, as we like to say at Budist. All of that evolved really through individuals. It was through passionate people that were then sharing their expertise out in their communities and getting other people excited about it. And there's a lot of examples that I can point to from how that evolved in wine or travel or movies. And so our whole thesis here is that we've got all these people in our industry and in our community that have been out there that are just so passionate, that are sharing the products that they love. You've got people that are focused on concentrates, people focused on flower. But what our industry doesn't yet have is really a unified language, a vernacular, and individuals that are helping out, going out and evangelizing these products and educating people in places that we can do this freely. Because as we know, we can't share our expertise freely or our love of these products on Instagram.
No.
LinkedIn is somewhat friendly to us. That's why we see so much activity there. But we just don't have that one dedicated home, that place that we can all go to and share. And so that was really the inspiration really was drawn from wine. And then along that journey, one of our business partners and investors and board members is one of the world's leading wine critics. His name's Antonio Galloni. And he was really one of those godfathers and pioneers that really helped with consumer education and also helping evangelize that small craft producer that didn't really have a voice in the industry. And this all happened in wine in the late 70s, early 80s, which then has helped us have this really well-articulated market that we see today in wine, where consumers want to go down the rabbit hole and understand the differences of all these products. And it's not just in cannabis where it's an indica or sativa. In wine, it's you go down the rabbit hole of terroir and appellation and growing methods. And so we just feel that is going to be a real catalyst moment for our industry. That's something that our industry, our community, consumers, everybody needs more education when it comes to the differences of these products. And because it's so new, when we're looking at how this evolved in other industries, that was really the connector for us is okay, I think that having a home, having a platform, having critics that are trusted, that are out sharing information, educating consumers, that is what we think that our industry needs to be able to help evolve to product premiumization, to consumers understanding why they'd pay more for a product, and just understanding what the experience with these products may be. So
how long did it take you to really build the app? What was that? What did that time frame look like?
Yeah. So this really started as an idea in 2022. And the idea had been mulling around for many years from many different partners, but we all came together in 2022 in July. And we raised a round, we built a team, we got everyone united behind this idea of a first dedicated rating and review platform. And sure enough, a couple months later, by January of 2023, we were off to the races. So we had then started developing the app. We first were designing out mocks in January. Development started in March. And within that time frame, then what we did is we created an editorial guideline where we thought really critically about, okay, we need to assemble a team of critics that have different subject matter expertise. How are we going to get everybody on the same page as not only how to assess cannabis products, but how they're going to write about it and translate it to the consumer? And how to do so in a way that's helpful to the brand and not about this isn't about just our own opinions. It's about how do we view ourselves as Sherpas. We have a team of 30 critics that we've assembled throughout this process.
Impressive.
And we're out there trying to, evangelize this with consumers. But the way that this all happened was as we were developing out the app, which took about 6 months to do, it actually got approved by Apple and Google on my birthday this last December. So we're not even a year of this being live. It took 6 months to really go build that out, assemble the team, create the editorial guidelines, get people reviewing products, populating the app with those products. And then, of course, going around and getting all the brands bought into what we were doing. because again, like this is just very new.
Mhm.
We're having a team of people that are assessing products using the 100-point system and going through all of the nuances of product, the aroma, the appearance, the flavor, the effect, and then writing about that in a way that's useful to the consumer. This is a pretty new concept for our industry. We've got other ratings and reviews, companies out there that are doing this in some form, but it's not really the core ethos. It's more of a feature, not like the core of what they're doing. So
But
anyways,
it allows for the critics to professionally give an opinion on a rating system, but it also allows the consumer to come in and give reviews as well, correct?
Exactly. So throughout that process of developing the app, we were studying every other analogous market and how they built something similar. So if we look at movies, for example, because we have that dual score rating system where we're using the 100-point system, consumers can also come in and rate products, review products. And we were really inspired by how that worked in movies. So if you look at the movie industry and how people really started to become film buffs, prior to having Rotten Tomatoes, a lot of that was done through the individual critic. It was Siskel and Ebert. You had a handful of voices that were really evangelizing just film connoisseurship and people really being into film and just critically analyzing everything about a film. That was done through a handful of critics that were the most vocal, mouthpieces there. Well, our thesis is that while we're starting off with a critic, that's simply because this is so new and we need evangelists to go out there and help normalize this with the consumer, to get the consumer interested and understanding how they would then partake in that process. But our mission is to democratize this, is that everybody's voice matters just as much. Mm-hmm. So the individual consumer's voice and experience with a cannabis product is equally as important as a critic. But the critic is going to help translate and educate the consumer as to what they would write about in a review, how they would thoughtfully think about assessing that product. And if we look at other major industries, whether that's wine or food is another great example, it really took these first voices that were setting that foundation to build this into a much bigger culture of connoisseurship in all of those industries. Like food isn't, I often give this example, but I think it's a really important one just to understand not only what our mission is at Budist, but just more broadly, what our thesis is for the industry as a whole, is that if you look at the culture of the foodie, because that's really what we're talking about. Like we're trying to build a culture of connoisseurship and celebrate products in a way that is, I don't want to say elevated, and we use that word often, but it's just truly celebrating the craftsmanship and the artistry of producers like yourself, who are really being so thoughtful and meticulous about your practices, and you're creating great art. And we want to celebrate that art. And we have to do that by having, first creating a home and a foundation for us to go do that. So using the example of food, I think about it this way. So Yelp was invented and came to light in 2004 in San Francisco. And if you think about prior to Yelp, how did your average consumer understand about a different restaurant and what their experience would be like at a restaurant?
Word of mouth. Yes.
Word of mouth, Michelin, Zagat, and the individual critic. They would then read about restaurant reviews in LA Times and New York Times, et cetera, et cetera. And
but general restaurants wouldn't have a critic or have somebody write something about them, right?
Exactly. And that's really what Yelp did, is Yelp then, by creating this platform, this home where people could then go share that knowledge and expertise. Well, what it then did is it created a whole culture of foodies. And the way that they went about that was the way that a lot of these other companies, whether they realized it or not, or these movements went about that, was by finding the most passionate people they could at the start of this whole new idea and having those people as evangelists. So the way Yelp did that is they created what they call Yelp Elite. When they launched in San Francisco, they basically went and they found their most passionate reviewers that were sharing their expertise on Yelp. And they were saying, hey, do you want to be a food critic? Come share your expertise on Yelp. And so they created a program called Yelp Elite, where they basically got these people together and they incentivized them. They said, we're going to invite you to restaurant openings. We're going to give you free product. We're going to make you a vocal and a piece of a community member that is respected. And we're going to give you the platform to do that. And so it was through that process that then all of those Yelp Elite members they then started sharing with their communities. And then the next thing you know, like, slowly and over time, you then see this whole community and industry evolve where you've got this culture of the foodie, where you've got people that then become so passionate and wanting to be either a restaurant critic or just partaking in that process, that it just democratized the whole process where everybody's voice was equally as important. And it wasn't just the voice of the critic. So that's just really important, I think, for people to understand what we're building is that this isn't just about the critic's voice. We just naturally have to start this movement, this platform off with the critic, because this is so new for our industry and our community that we need evangelists out there that are helping normalize cannabis. And we've, assembled a group of 30 people that are some of the most passionate people I know in California, which is where we've launched, which is all the brands and products that are in the app and on the platform today are California based. And people often say, well, why don't you have every product on the platform? Or when is this going to be in New York or whatever state you're in? But it's like, just like Yelp was in San Francisco proper for the first year of their business, these things take time to really build and to go expand. And we're following suit to how we've seen Yelp evolve. We're very inspired by their business model and how that all works for them. And again, it really started with individuals that are passionate, that wanted to be Sherpas, that wanted to be evangelists for a movement and for something much, much bigger than themselves.
Well, I want to come back to how the critics become qualified or certified, but I want to switch gears real quick. And I'd like to just understand from you, what are your favorite 3 things about the cannabis industry today?
Okay. My favorite 3 things. I mean, well, for me, first and foremost, it's community. Like, that's number one. Just being a part of this community and this movement has truly just changed my whole world. I think about my past experiences and just, I've always been a very passionate person. And even with what I was doing in tech before and just being a part of the birth of something new it still wasn't as connecting into my heart as much as it was what I'm doing now, because of the community. It's really unique. And I think you would agree what we experience in this industry. It's unlike anything I've experienced. And I've come from another birth of another industry where it was the same thing. You get a lot of passionate people that are like, this is new, this is exciting, I want to be, but for something to connect to us on an emotional level, and it connects to us all for a different reason, that's really powerful. And just being around so many passionate people, I mean, that first and foremost for me personally is what is just, I love the most. It's my whole life. I eat, breathe, sleep, this whole industry, this community, everything about this. It's my every single day.
We're making history.
Yes, we are.
Breaking glass ceilings. Like, it's we're fighting for this plant every single day.
Yes.
And we have an incredible community of people that all feel the same way and love this plant. And because of that, it is an incredible community that we have that continues to grow.
Yeah. The second thing that I would say is it's like, again, I feel like I say this word or this phrase, a culture of connoisseurship a lot, but I think what I really mean by that is I feel like we're at a place in our society where, because people are just so inundated with this is a really hard time for so many people. I think you would agree, just a lot of people I know around me, it doesn't matter what your income level is, your demographics, it doesn't matter. People are struggling across the board. Yeah. And I think in part is that, like, we have to be passionate about something. And I really enjoy things and individuals and companies and people that are just so passionate about something that it almost changes your perspective of the world, because it's this level of connoisseurship and appreciation for artistry and craftsmanship. And again, like, pointing to some of the examples, whether it's food, whether it's wine, I personally just love people that are really passionate about something, that it's their art, that it's their craft. And again, like, there's few things that are like that on this level where the artistry runs so deep, because something like cannabis it's not just a plant that you're growing. This is generational knowledge. It's tradition, it's culture, it's environment, it's terroir, it's region. There's just so much to explore and so much to appreciate. And I think that's almost a lost art form in our society today, in a society which is of often mass and more and more. And I just really think that celebrating and putting out a message of appreciating things in their truest form for the artists and the craftsmen that they are is just a beautiful thing. It's like a lost art form. And I want to build something and celebrate people that are doing that, especially in the cannabis industry, which is, like and not for this to be a knock, I'm cognizant of how I say this, but there's a lot of people that are just capitalizing on the opportunity to build fast companies thinking that they're going to get rich.
Not California anymore.
And it's just consumers at some point, and this is like the heart of why we're building this. Consumers deserve to understand the practices, what goes into those products, the artistry behind those products. Those are the products that I want to celebrate. Those are the producers that I want to celebrate. And consumers do as well, but we just don't have that yet, knowledge and at scale in our industry. So that's my second thing.
And that's what I love about the cannabis industry, that is so much innovation and there's so many new products that we can make, that have never existed before because we can add cannabis in a different way in these different products. Like our topical, there's nothing like it out there that gives you that instant pain relief because you have that THC in there. And then intimate wellness products that, that I love to do. I want to make products that inspire and help and people in different ways. So I feel like it is an exciting time to kind of dive into different type of innovative products that we have.
Yes. Well, that would be my third. That's my third, like the thing that I'm then most passionate about is it's exactly to your point. You have people that there's things products that we can be creating with cannabis that can treat all types of different things, or not even just treat, but enhance all different types of experiences for us. And so having the opportunity to be around people that are using cannabis and creating things that can help in a multitude of ways, that's just so powerful. And on my daily basis, just with like the team that we assembled a very diverse team of people that are using cannabis for very different reasons. And the reasons are just all across the board. And it's just a big reminder of that this plant can help in so many different ways. And so just being able to be around something that you can do that is my third passion and kind of why we're doing this.
And even with the flower, I mean, there's, you're right. I mean, for those people that are really leaning into making it different than just some weed that grows, that really putting their heart and soul into what means something to them. And to some people that's, for like an outdoor grower, regenerative farming. For us, it's zero pesticides and non-detect whatsoever. So, being able to really go above and beyond in different ways that really means something to that cultivator or that brand is also really important and cool to see how that continues to develop.
Yep, exactly. And there's no right or wrong way. It's interesting because in our industry, you get a lot of vocal people that have their preference, whether it's sun-grown or whether it's indoor. Like people feel very strongly about the things that they like, and there's no right or wrong to it. No. It's like our whole opinion is let's celebrate the people, and again, the producers that hold a strong opinion that whatever their practice is, whatever their cultivation method, that doesn't matter to us. We want to celebrate the artists that are doing the great work and really being thoughtful about whatever it is that they're producing.
Yeah, that's truly what's most important. Okay, so is there one or two things that maybe you would change about the cannabis industry?
I mean, the main thing is just the infighting, really, and I'm hesitant to say that, but it's just, we really have to just figure out some commonality and some common ground. We saw this working together on the board of CCIA, right? You've got all these different opinions, very strong opinions. But ultimately, I think we need to figure out what is that one thing that we can all unite around? Because for those who may listen, to your podcast that aren't in the cannabis industry, I'm almost hesitant to say that because I don't want people to have a negative perception of our community. But people have to remember that we're pioneering something very new. And there's a lot of instability to our industry with policy and regulation, with just how it operates on so many different levels, that I think what we need to do is really find what is the commonality and how can we then unite behind that so that we're putting, out a similar message to really advance things when it comes to policy and regulation. And we just have to figure out what that is. And I'm not saying that I have the answer to what that is. I think it starts with conversation and understanding each other. And I will say that from my own, with what we're building with Budist, I see that just on using the example of indoor versus sun grown. I mean, we have some sun-grown producers that are like, no, this is environmental. This indoor is not the right way here, and very strong opinions. So that's one minor example that I even see it at that level. And it's like, to me, the whole like mission and what we're doing is like, let's celebrate this on a much larger scale to where people are appreciating, again, the artistry and the craftsmanship. And it's less about, that's the commonality. Like that's the commonality in our case. We're celebrating artists, we're celebrating producers, but we need to find that on a much larger scale within our industry. Like, what is that commonality? And we saw that, through all of the different policy things that we're working on. Right now, it's like hemp versus cannabis. But where can we find that commonality within that conversation to push this forward? And I think until we as an industry and a community really get united, it's going to be really hard to then go get other new consumers, which we all need, because we're all trying to bring more people into this fold to appreciate cannabis the way that we do. And until we can really figure out how to do that, it's really hard then to get people to appreciate something where there's already seeing all this negativity and infighting. So that's the main thing that I want.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really the key to our success, is all being able to come together and really appreciate what each one does. And while it may not fit within what our focus is, that's the only way that we can really get policy accomplished. Because truly, otherwise the government's going to make decisions and we're going to be left on the sidelines and not being able to have a voice because we can't agree, and then things don't get accomplished, which is kind of just what occurred with the hemp and cannabis. So now we're trying again. But, yes, like even like outdoor and indoor, those kind of things, because everyone kind of points the finger, well, they're disrupting what I'm trying to do. But again, the more we can come together, focus on the bigger picture. Like we focused on Prop 64, bigger picture, get it legalized. And then once something's legalized, we all kind of go our own ways and forget about that we actually still need to work together. And we got another big year coming up next year with excise tax on the table to raise up to 19%. And that's going to affect all of us. So I'm really hoping, like you said, that we can really just all come together and focus on what's really important and compromise so that we can get this done. And that our industry in California and other states that are struggling can be a profitable industry again. And also when times like this are tough and people are stressed because money is stressful, it is hard to see past that and be able to work together. But it is more important than ever, like you said, for that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, collaboration is really key right now. It's interesting because, as you probably see, like we're out with Budist doing so many different things. We've done 25 different events over the last 7-month period. This will be 26 this week and 27. And it's just like the way that we're personally making this work from a business standpoint, because we raised a very modest amount of capital to go do this. It's through collaboration, and we're collaborating with companies that people might find as competitive in some aspect. But we're finding that we're stronger together, and there's things that we can each, like puzzle pieces that we're each adding to this bigger piece here, this bigger puzzle. And it's been a big learning for me, because we've just seen so much success in being able to grow faster, being able to do so much more if we're collaborating with other people and companies that are mission aligned, even though there may be some competitive aspect to it. And we're just working with trusted people that we know that share kind of the same mission that we do. And it's just working wonderfully. And we're going to continue doing that until we can get through. Well, not until we can get through, but just for our longevity as a business. Like that's really been the key for us. Collaboration is everything.
And I think you are perfectly positioned to be able to help coordinate that kind of scenario, right? Because you are looking at, let's just say flower, for example. So you're looking at an outdoor product, a greenhouse product, and an indoor product, and they may all get a 95. And you're like, you three are in the top 90s, for what you do individually, because you each make something really incredible in your own way. Like, why don't we do something, the three of you come together and really celebrate each other, in a way. So I think that you really being this perfect, not middleman, probably not the right word, but really that liaison, which I think is really important. And all the events that you're putting on and that you're doing and really embracing the big picture of our industry.
Well, thank you for saying that, because it's by intent, and that's exactly what we're doing. It's like with these 25 events that we've done, that's we're trying to bring together the brands and the producers that exactly are doing really great work, and it doesn't matter what that cultivation method is, just speaking to flowers specifically. Then we're able to be that vocal mouthpiece, that supporter of all of those different brands to translate that to the consumer. And the way that we're doing that, we've, with all these events that we're doing, like, you can think of it as like a wine tasting. When you go taste wines, you're not tasting through all of the same. Well, if you go to one winery, then you're tasting through a very similar, growing method. But even there, they have different growing methods within different varietals and whatnot. So it's like bringing all of those differences together and then having us there to really guide that experience and teach people about what's so beautiful about each of these different cultivation practices, speaking to flowers specifically. It's just really cool to watch people's eyes light up, and people who may have had a perception that, like, oh, I just thought, sun grown or what, or indoor or whatever is like the optimal. Then they walk away being like, no, I recognize, and now I understand all that went into that different type of product that maybe I wasn't as interested in. And now I am, because I'm getting to do this side by side comparison and tasting and getting to learn about what makes that product so unique or that producer so unique. But it just, again, it really requires, I think, passionate people who know what they're talking about, who are great educators that can go translate that to the consumer. And that's like one of the primary things that we looked for in the people in the group that we assembled, was people that wanted to do just that, and that they weren't stuck to their own personal opinions, but rather the mission of raising this for everybody by celebrating whatever style or method that any other company or producer is creating.
So in the wine industry, we have sommeliers. My husband even went and he got, I think, his first or second or two sommelier, which was really cool to see. But now there's a program, the Ganjier program, where you can actually get certified in cannabis. Can you tell us more about this? I know you've gone through it, and it's not necessarily an easy or short process, but can you tell us more about it and how it's helped you and your critics on Budist?
Yes. It is. I will echo that. It is not an easy or a short process. For people who aren't familiar, so the Ganjier program is now in its fourth cohort. It's a 4-year-old program, and it was started by Kevin Jodrey amongst a group of other passionate people like Nika T, Amanda Ryman, Derek Gilman, just some people who've been very passionate, vocal people in our industry. And it's modeled after the sommelier certification. And so the way the program works and the whole ethos of it is it's bringing the art, the craft, and the education, and having experts and people that are trained in how to evaluate cannabis, and it's professionalizing it so that we can then be that vocal educator with the consumer. So with it being modeled after the sommelier certification, it was quite a long process. So I started it in October of last year, actually, March of last year, as we were developing out the Budist app. And the program took 6 months to complete. So started in March. There's 50 hours of training videos that you first go through, where you're learning everything from the art, the science, and the service of, how to educate consumers.
Wow.
And so that you go through this 50 hours of training videos, then you go up to the Ganjier campus for a 2-day offsite, where you're actually learning how to assess. And so that's where you're sitting down and you're getting to learn from people like Kevin Jodrey. You're getting to learn from people like Nika T, who has a focus on concentrates. Again, just really trusted, respected people with long histories and backgrounds in this industry. And you're learning to assess, and you're learning to assess 50 different qualitative nuances of flower and concentrates. But flower is really the core of the program. And so they'll teach you how do you assess for the aroma, the appearance, the flavor, and then of course effect is a part of it as well. But I mean, it gets really detailed. You're looking at the tactile, you're looking at the trim, you're looking at the trichome density, you're looking at the maturity of the bud, you're looking, was it properly stored? There's so many aspects to qualitatively assessing the quality of a product, and they teach you that foundation. Once you learn that, then it's about applying it. So then I spent several months where we would get together on Zoom twice a week. They would send everybody the same cultivar. And then you would get together with all of these Ganjiers and current students. There would be 50 people that would be on this Zoom meeting twice a week. And I did this for months, twice a week for several months. And we would come together and we'd calibrate off each other. We would go walk through all of these, different, these like 50 different data points essentially. And we would all go through and share our own opinions and our expertise. And we would then learn from each other. We would say, oh, interesting. If we're discussing the aroma, it's like, oh, really? Okay. You're getting, lime, and it's like a key lime pie. Okay. Well, what are you getting? And then you start to really refine your palate. And for me, that was what helped build my confidence, because I've been consuming for 10 years prior to going through that program and consuming consistently. But I hadn't really been thinking about cannabis and assessing it in that way. I hadn't really been paying attention to a lot of those nuances, a lot of those details. Therefore, I also wasn't then discussing it openly with other people around me. So I didn't really have the language to describe my own experiences. But then here I am being with other people that then hearing how they describe the aroma, hearing how they describe these different aspects of the plant. It not only confirmed that my palate was on par and it was, I don't want to say right because it's so subjective, but it really gave me that confidence to say, okay, great. Well, I'm also getting lime from this. I'm getting not key lime pie, but I'm getting a candied lime. And it reminds me of when I was a child and it was this specific candy. So it just was a really important process of learning to appreciate cannabis, being around other people and sharing our experiences and having the language to do so was just, it's just really critical to my own like connoisseurship. And then of course, like, everything that we're building at Budist and just for the industry, like that was the big learning, is like having the forum and the community of people around me to go openly discuss it. And so the whole program took me about 6 months before I went and felt confident to then go test. When you go test, you're then tested on all of those aspects that I mentioned. You're tested on the knowledge. So there's a written component, a 100 question test that you need to complete. Then there's, of course, the assessment. So everyone on testing day would have a different cultivar. You would then, obviously, the educator, the person at the Ganjier program who is testing you would know what that cultivar is. And you would then have to describe it. And you would walk through and you would assess all of those different, nuances of it. And then, communicate that back. And if you were, within a certain point, then you would pass. And then from there, then it's about the service. So then you would test and you would do a mock kind of service interview with a potential consumer and guide someone through that process. So it was a very comprehensive program. I just for me, the kind of key takeaway is what I'm sharing here, where it's like the language and the vernacular and the community of people to go openly share. That for me was the most critical part of this. The education and the knowledge is just key in understanding, everything that they go through, from cultivation practices, all types of things. But it was really the opportunity to calibrate with other people that was just so eye-opening for me and had such a big impact. And, this is how in wine, it's that's a very common thing. People get together, they have tasting groups, and this is done in so many different ways where people will lead a tasting group and they'll say, hey, here's a $100 budget. Everyone needs to go out and buy these wines. We're going to come back together. We're all going to drink it together. We're going to assess. We're going to calibrate from each other's palates. That's been happening in wine for a really long time. And so again, with a lot of our inspiration coming from wine, for me, just having the opportunity to do that in cannabis, it just helped connect a lot of dots.
Well, I appreciated our recent experience. You had a little session, you and Claudio taught a group of us at Meadowlands. And it was really eye-opening to, we had all our different tables and I'm sitting at a table with nobody that I know. And you gave us a color chart with different things to correlate. The aroma wheel that we were feeling. And so we all got to really observe the bud and the trichomes and what it looked like, what it felt like, what it smelled like, and then rolled it into a joint and then dry smoked it, which is something I've never done before, but I really thought was cool because then you're not, for those that don't want us to keep going and get high, or even if you do, you get that first step of really appreciating the terpenes and appreciating the taste and the smell in a different way before you actually light it up. So I loved every single step of that process and laughing and giggling, with everyone at my table and learning, how you can go so much deeper, like I think we have gotten used to with wine, but now in this way with cannabis, and where we can really appreciate it in such a new way.
Yes, yes. Well, that was a really special experience because, for people not familiar, Meadowlands brings together like 200, industry entrepreneurs and advocates and thought leaders and just people who are really passionate within the industry in California. And this takes place in the Anderson Valley, which is in Mendocino County. And for people who have not had an opportunity to visit, it is just such an exquisite place where it's a wonderful wine region, also cannabis growing region, agricultural region. It's just so phenomenal. But with that particular, Buddhist session, as we call it, this guided tasting, we were assessing Black African magic from the Bohemian Chemist, which they're a cultivator that was just a few miles from that location in Anderson Valley, where we were all posted up camping in the redwoods for Meadowlands. But just being able to kind of guide that session where we're going through and helping people understand and calibrate off each other, but being there on within the environment, within that terroir, that region where this particular strain, Black African Magic, was grown, though that's a landrace strain that originated in the Congo, for us to be able to come together and just focus on this one cultivar, I wonder if that's why your experience was powerful and you're describing it in this way, because it's really just focused on that, just going into the details of that one cultivar. We're in the land where it just connects the dots. We're like, oh my gosh, I get it. I understand this product was grown here. I'm here. I can sense, I feel the weather. I see everything around me. It just really helps, solidify that experience and connect dots for people when they can physically be on the land getting to experience that. So that was just a really fun calibration and guided assessment that we did, where we could just really kind of get into just one specific cultivar and go really deep on that and help people appreciate it in the way you're describing.
Yeah, it was a blast. I loved it. I know you are launching a Budist blog. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little more about that?
We just launched our Budist blog last week. Yeah, a big learning throughout this, let's say 7 months of us being publicly debuted, because, again, I find myself having to remind people, because even though we've been on this journey for 2 years, taking it from an idea to fruition, and I've been so vocal and sharing just our entrepreneurial journey and how we've been building Budist, a big learning for me as we've been publicly debuted over these last 7 months is that just what we're doing is really, really new. And the assumptions that we had from a business standpoint in building a rating and review platform that is open to everyone and allows consumers to come in just as much as critics. A big learning from this has been that this is just so new, and that we really need to create more of a foundation for people to understand things like, what does a culture of connoisseurship mean? What does it mean when I say that? That can mean so many different things to people. Why use the 100-point system? What is the importance of that? And how have we seen that, help grow the wine industry? Having conversation around appellation and terroir, creating this unified language. We're realizing that we really need to help build some foundational building blocks for our industry. And our approach to doing this, not that this information doesn't exist on other websites or other businesses aren't sharing this, they're sharing this type of information. It's just, we're very focused on this being about products, producers, and places. And a lot of the content that we're creating is meant to build this foundation for our industry, for consumers to understand, well, how do you think about assessing products? How do you think about sharing that with other people? How would you write about this? How do you translate this? Whether you're writing a review, whether you're just sharing it with a personal friend or whatever, and you're verbally articulating it, the language is, we don't have a unified language in this industry yet. And so that's a big part of why we wanted to get our blog going, is just educational content to really help people understand and give people foundational, building blocks as to how they can be a part of the process. I know that sounds kind of broad, but it is things like, well, how do you rate and review cannabis products? What does that mean? How do you assess the aroma? How do you then articulate that? We really need to have more of that kind of educational information out in the marketplace. And there's just no better people to learn from than some of our group of individuals in our Buddhists, because this is just so new that a lot of this knowledge even exists just within their heads. It's not yet that they haven't put this out into the world on sharing it in other with other companies and whatnot. So it's having people like, I mentioned again, like Kevin Jodrey, like giving guidance to our Budists and to say, hey, we're recognizing in the market that people don't really understand how to describe the aroma of flower. Can you help us translate that to the consumer? It's like there's just all of these people within our network and community that have this subject matter expertise that hasn't been shared out publicly, that we want to be that platform and place for them to go do that. So again, we can evangelize this bigger mission that we have. So it's really incredible just to kind of build this forum for people that are just solely focused on sharing their passion behind the people, the products, and the places that are defining our industry.
Well, I love it. So our question of the day is, how do you elevate daily?
How do I elevate daily? Walking, probably. I mean, I'm a big, my partner Claudia and I walk every day. I mentioned we split our time between Oakland and Newport. And in Oakland, we live right on Lake Merritt. And so it's just a beautiful, perfect 5K all around the lake. And it's like my peace of mind, and just, it's incredible the ideas that come to me when I'm just simply walking and just focused on just being present in that moment. And it's funny because I don't do a lot of other, I don't have another physical activity that I really do. It's walking. Like at this point in my life, that's my main thing that just keeps me centered and grounded. And of course, having a puff before of some, beautiful cultivar that I love is always how I start off my walk. But that's how I exhale. That's really what keeps me grounded.
You are gorgeous and very tall. Are you a speed walker or are you a gradual walker?
I'm a speed walker. I grew up a ballet dancer. And so I'm a very kind of structured thinker and walker in that sense. Like I'm very kind of Claudia says I'm like dancing while I'm walking in a sense. But yes, that's it helps keep me sane.
Where can our brands submit their products to you, and where can the consumer or non-consumer find you, learn more?
Yes. Well, I should say we are open and want to celebrate every brand. So the way that works is check out our website, and there's a form on there. You can complete the form. And then we'll go through that process of getting your products, submitting that to the right, or distributing it to the right critic, who then has that subject matter expertise to review those products. So brands, California brands, please come find us, visit the website, reach out to me individually. We are here for you and want to support you.
What's the website?
Budist.com. And then if a consumer, please follow us on Instagram, download the app. That's the best way to really understand what we're doing to support your, friends in the industry or in the community. If you want to learn about what makes these products so special, that's really where we're highlighting and celebrating all of these producers. We're then going to be having this available on our website, but the app is really our core home. And it's incredible to see the group of people that are, sharing their expertise, and just the quality of review and the photography, and just how much our whole group who's involved in this are really here. You can sense that they're really here to celebrate the brands and the producers. And so please download the app, check it out, get a sense of what we're doing. And we're doing a ton of events. So if you want to come be a part of this, again, check out our website. We've got an events tab on there, and you can come join any of these. We do a bunch of different styles of events. And so we just want to bring more people into this fold and connect with other passionate people that want to celebrate these products and just elevate the conversation around the plant. And so find us on any of the channels, and please reach out and connect.
And you have a newsletter too. They can sign up for the newsletter to find out what's going on.
Absolutely. Yes. And everything we do, I hope people get a sense, and we often get comments on this, that we're really thoughtful individuals, and we're really thoughtful about everything that we put out. So with our newsletter, it's not, we get a lot of comments where people are like, I read every single word of your newsletter because it's just really valuable. It's not fluff. I'm very conscious of how limited people's time is. And so just from every touch point, whether it's our app, our newsletter, our website, we're just really moving through this whole experience and creating something that we hope will be high value to people, and that we're very conscious of people's time, and we're not here to just kind of create some fluff. And I hope people can see that. And anyone who wants to be a part of it, we want you in this community, and we want you to be a part of this however you want to be. So please come join us.
Well, Jocelyn, this was so lovely. I'm so excited for yours and Claudio's and Budist's future and where our industry is headed and all the great work that you're doing in advocacy. And I'm excited as Budist starts to develop more and more and people start to appreciate cannabis more in their life and are able to really kind of understand it in such a different way. So this was so informative. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do, and keep up the great work. You guys are doing so awesome, and it's really fun to read all of the reviews of Autumn brands. It's just, our team loves you guys, and so keep it up.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to Inhale, Exhale, Elevate. I am Autumn Shelton.